For USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Shotgun Spratling for instant analysis of USC's 12th practice of spring camp. Shotgun, you're back. You got to see some O-line mixing and matching, and you got to see some full pads. So let's start off with your overall evaluation of the day.
Well, it's a little overcast right now. It's a little chilly. It feels kind of like a fall practice, and it kind of went like a fall practice. And by that I mean it was much more routine than some of the other practices we've seen, which is not a bad thing necessarily, but we didn't mix it up with something that kind of surprised us or anything like that. You know, the situational periods that they wanted to run, they went through those and got some work done in those things. But also, it would be a concerning practice if this was the fall, because we did see a number of players out with injuries and also some guys leave practice with injuries. But the good thing is it's spring, and hopefully none of those are serious, so there won't be an issue in the fall. But a couple guys did go down today.
So much so that we actually wrote it down, so I'll list it off to you. So before practice, we saw Britton Allen, Josh Fallow, and Drake Jackson not dressed out. We noted on Wednesday that Drake Jackson was not at practice. We thought it was a class thing, but now not so sure since he wasn't dressed out today. Britton Allen, that was a new one. Not sure what's going on there. And then Josh Fallow, he did go down on Wednesday with a knee injury, it looked like, so he might have re-aggravated that bone bruise that he had. And then we saw Andrew Millick. He was dressed out, but he had a brace on his knee, didn't practice. We heard from Clay Helton this morning that he has a non-surgical knee sprain, so USC actually got lucky with that one because it looked pretty serious at the time on Wednesday. And then we had multiple injuries during practice. We saw Mike Jackson get carted off, and then Liam Jimmons also came out, Tuasivi Nomura, Isaac Taylor-Stewart, and Brandon Campbell came out. So I know that was a big list, Shotgun, but if you want to go into more detail here.
Well, I mean, that's on top of all the guys that were already out on Wednesday. I don't think anybody came back today of note. You had Dorian Hewitt, you had Kalana McCoy, you had a bunch of guys that were already out either from the spring game or from Wednesday's practice. So, a number of guys not dressed today. So a little bit of concern there, though it is the end of spring. You're winding down a little bit now. It's not like you're ramping up for the spring game. It's more of a wind down period. So we'll see how they kind of address this the next week, the final week of spring practice. Are they going to push any guys? I don't think that's going to happen. So you may see less bodies out there as the last week goes along. But the concerning thing is you had two guys carted off. Michael Jackson III was carted off with looked like a foot injury. He had both shoes off when he was carted off. But then Liam Jimmons as well, offensive line, ends up mixing and matching a lot. But, this was an additional, forcing them to mix and match a little bit more because Jimmons left with a left ankle injury. So you're always concerned when someone has to be carted off. Now, maybe it's just, making it easier instead of them limping over to the training room. But you always pause just a little bit when you see the cart come out. So a little bit of concern there. The fact that there were so many guys that went out today, a little bit of concern. We'll see where it goes next week and how many players are available, because there's some positions, including when Isaac Taylor-Stewart goes out, you only have three cornerbacks left. So, Chris Steele was running with the ones and twos today, getting some extra work in the final couple periods. So, how much are those guys going to be able to keep up that pace, for a full practice? That's a little bit of concern the last week, too.
And this is also just a product of having physical practices like USC's been having. So that's kind of what comes with the territory. But like I mentioned, offensive line mixing and matching. This was your first real taste of it. What did you see today?
Yeah, you see multiple guys, and when I first got here, the one of the pairings that I saw was the four starters that we've seen, and Jonah Monheim at left tackle. I'm like, is this really the mixing and matching we're going to see? But then after that, we started seeing guys moving around a little bit more. Jalen McKenzie playing some guard after Liam Jimmons went down. He was on the second team a little bit. Cortland Ford got some reps at right tackle. Just a lot of guys moving around there. And then we've seen some different looks with the offensive line, where they'll use some overs and try to overload one side or the other, just to mix things up. So you're seeing some guys in different spots. Casey Collier was back today, after his quarantine period, after returning from Texas to be with his sister for the WNBA draft. He looks like a guy who looked a little bit winded at the end of practice. A couple of blocks where he just wasn't getting down and getting the leverage that you need to in the final periods. So don't know if that was part of the issue there. But that's something he's got to work on just in general, because of that big frame he has at 6 foot. Listed at 6'7", even though Clay Helton noted him at 6'9" earlier this camp. So I don't know if he's grown. It's possible. He's only an 18, 19-year-old kid. So that's something he's got to continue to work on. That's the Zach Banner, process, where even though you're a huge dude, you still got to get down and get that actual leverage. So something to watch there. Jonah Monheim at left tackle, looked comfortable, and that's the one that kind of stuck out and stood with me. Just the fact that they've tried him there, and he played left tackle at Moore Park High School and was a mauler there for them. He was kind of beating up on some smaller kids. I think his future's in the interior, but he's looked good at tackle. That's where I've kind of envisioned him being in the future. But, keep an eye on him. He continues to make strides, and he had some positive reinforcement from Clay Helton this morning saying that he's, stood out to him. And then I was hoping to see some Angiavoris at left tackle. I was still looking for it. And I asked Clay Helton about it this morning when we spoke to him, and I said, because Clay Helton gave him a little dap, from the spring game, so he looked really good. So I felt, like I actually noted one correctly.
Well done, well done.
But, I asked him, so does that mean he's in consideration for the left tackle? And he said, yeah, he's in consideration for a tackle position. And never said left in that answer.
Okay.
So I noted that and said, okay, they may use him at right tackle, but I don't think he's going to be bumping out. I think they're just so comfortable with him and that interior potential of him beside Brett Nealon and then either Justin Dedich or Liam Jimmins on the other side that I don't think he's going to move out. But it's something they can do. And he showed that he can do it on short notice and being there. So if they have an injury, that's a possibility. But that's one I was hoping to see just because I thought he looked really good in that spring game. I wanted to see some more reps to see if he can continue and build on that. But it doesn't look like that's going to be an option for him, at least not from one practice. We'll see if anything changes next week.
There's been 2 significant injuries now on the offensive line. Do you expect them to pull back a little bit on the mixing and matching? What do you anticipate going forward?
I mean, I don't think you're going to pull back on mixing and matching. You're going to continue to cross-train. It's not like, whether you're playing tackle or whether you're playing guard, it's going to be more of an injury risk. I think they still want to get looks at guys, and maybe this is an opportunity to get some looks at some more guys. You throw up a Gino Quinones or a Jason Rodriguez, with the short numbers, do you throw them out at tackle just to, get a glimpse and see what it looks like, get the tape on it, build off the tape in case – in the fall, they make some progression. You say, okay, and there's some injuries. We need to put them at tackle. Yeah. Okay, we can build off this tape. This is what we need to work on from the spring. Those are the type of things that maybe you see, and with the smaller numbers of the scholarship guys, maybe that's something they try out a little bit. But I don't think that they're going to pull back at all from mixing and matching now. I think, Clay Helton, the way he made it sound is that they're going to use these final 2 weeks because they had the spring game in the middle, that they're going to use the final 2 weeks to do that a little bit more, to give an idea, kind of get that baseline of where guys are at if they need to put them in those type of situations.
Mm-hmm. We saw a lot of team run today. It looked like the offense kind of had the edge in the beginning. We saw a good run from Brandon Campbell before he went down with an injury. Also saw Keely Slovis maybe with his best throw of the spring. What did you take away from the first team run period?
Well, the team run period, it seemed like every running back got in the end zone. So the offense came out, and you kind of noted that the defense looked a little bit lethargic early. Now, they picked it up a little bit later, but the offense was making the most of the opportunities in the team run period. And to see each of the running backs get in the end zone, I think every single one, all the way down to Matt Colombo, got in. Now, Colombo got in the later period. But in that first period, all the scholarship guys, I believe, got in for a touchdown. Like you said, the nice Brandon Campbell run. He continues to flash. Now, we don't see the consistency there yet, but he continues to flash. And Keontae Ingram, he continues to make a guy miss once or twice in practice, and it catches your eye a little bit. So both those Texas kids, making the most of their chances this spring, and are catching our eye for sure.
Mm-hmm. Like you mentioned, the defense looked a little lethargic. Liam Jimmins picked up on it during one of the battles. He yelled, the defense has no juice today. Well, they found the juice later on in the red zone period. It seemed like the defense definitely took it seriously. And I think at one point Helton yelled, let's make it 0 for 5, meaning they were going to win that period.
I mean, those are fighting words for the defense, right?
Yeah.
For Vic Soto, he's like, no juice. Oh, we're going now.
Yeah.
So no, that's what they've been saying since this new staff came, is we got to bring the juice every day. And when someone calls you out like that, I think that's something, and you want to see that. You want to see teammates calling each other out like that and telling people that need to pick it up in a competitive way. But the defense, they did a final goal line period, and the first team defense, first 4 plays, shut everything down. They tried a pass attempt. They tried a couple different runs. Everything was locked up. Kanai Malga was, in there and being feisty with it. He was like an annoying little brother. Like every time he's pushing on somebody a little bit after the play, he's taunting them a little bit. So you see the competitive spirit coming out, and they're having fun still, which is great to see. But the defense definitely, they dominated the final period, except for one play, the 5th play when Clay Helton said, first team, hey, get off over 5, try to make it over 5. They ran a play with some motion for Drake London. He got some separation. And the ball was a little bit thrown behind him, and he goes up and makes a one-handed catch, a special play from Drake London, and he continues to make those type of plays. We saw him with a nice slot fade touchdown catch earlier in practice as well. So, seeing him on the inside and outside and doing different things, the fact that you're using him in motion in some of those run periods as well tells you that I think they're really going to try to focus on getting him the ball in different ways this season, something we haven't necessarily seen from the offense in the past, where it's been, you're going to play this position, whichever guy's open. Instead, I think maybe they're going to try to use him because he's such a mismatch that you're going to try to put him on, find him against a linebacker, find him against a safety, find him against a corner, find him against anybody. He's a mismatch, really. There's a different way that he's a mismatch, but I think you're going to look at the defense and say, okay, what's their weakest position? Let's put him on that guy and go make some plays.
It's kind of a random question for me, but we've seen Drew Mccoy now in full pads for a couple practices now that he's come back from that COVID protocol. What have you seen from him?
He's so big. He's very similar to Drake London in that he's a constant mismatch, and I love his physicality. He's ready to take on a hit whenever you need, and I'm curious to see if the blocking on the outside and if they can use him in different ways, as a screen blocker and different things, because we've seen them use Gary Bryant as a screen blocker, and Gary Bryant gives great effort, but it's a little different when his frame versus Drew McCoy is trying to block that cornerback on the edge. If you can create and push a guy, and create an opening down the sideline, and you get a guy like Keontae Ingram or Brandon Campbell or a Gary Bryant with the speed that he has, then maybe that's something that you see, turn into a really big play for USC. So I'm curious to see what he does in various aspects now that he's going to be asked to do a little bit more this season.
Yeah. I think it helps when you're a former linebacker in the Trinity League. It gives you extra toughness.
I still want to see him, if he gets all the pass concepts down, let's throw that third down rush package in there with him coming off the edge. Him, Drake Jackson, Corey Foreman on the field together. If USC can land JT to him, that's a great pass rush option there with all young guys. Let's make it happen.
I've asked him. He said the door isn't closed there, so we'll see. But as far as the defensive line, I feel like that's still an intriguing position that we keep watching. We did note in the War Room on Friday that Caleb Tremblay did enter the NCAA transfer portal, so you're seeing some more mix-ups there. But Clay Helton said he's not worried about depth as far as the defensive line. But I know Jamar Sakona was the guy that you and I both noted today.
Yeah, he's making plays and being vocal. As a second-year freshman, I think that he's becoming more comfortable. Now, Clay Helton's talked about him and Jay Toya about how they've transformed their bodies during this off-season conditioning. I think it's giving him confidence. And that's when you see young guys start talking a little bit more, that's usually what it is. They're gaining confidence. They feel confident in what they're doing on the field as far as making plays. But now you can talk a little bit and back it up, too. And it's not just talking to the offense, but, telling the defense, hey, we got to get this stop, we got to do this. And you don't normally see that from a freshman, even a redshirt freshman. But I think the fact that he's making so many plays, it's giving him that confidence, and it's just continuing to grow, which is a good thing to see. Thought he had a really nice day again. A guy that we haven't really mentioned much in fall camp, but continues to do the small things. I've noted a couple times is Hunter Echols coming off the edge. He ended up with an interception a day on a tip pass of Keaton Slovis. So, that was the first real big play maybe we've seen from him. But he's doing the small things like setting the edge and doing small the things that help out a defense and create tackles for other guys that maybe go unnoticed in the box score, but are really big on film.
Alrighty, Shotgun. 3 more practices left in spring camp. It's a different schedule next week. We'll go Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, so stay tuned for that. But any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
I'm curious to see. I've got them at 7 padded practices so far, and they're allowed 8. We'll see. If they're able to get 1 or 2 in, which one of those practices they use. Do you build up to the final practice and have it be a culmination and kind of be a scrimmage on a Friday, or do you get one in earlier in the week and then kind of, have it, fade out a little bit on this? So I'm curious to see how they do that. And again, with the mixing and matching, what they're going to do. It's been a unique spring just with the schedule and what they're trying to do as far as build the culture. So it's been interesting just watching how it's developed, how the practice plans have developed. I thought it's been pretty interesting to see what they've done so far. So I'm curious to see what they do the final week as well. Did want to note one player that stood out for me today that caught my eye a couple times, Kalen Bullock. They call him Sticks. Some of his teammates are calling him Sticks because he's got very skinny legs, not because he wears number 11. That's a baseball nickname usually. But he may have small legs, but he brings the fire and brings the intensity and attacks. He's just constantly on the attack, going through screens on some wide receiver screen passes and stuff. I like the way he's coming downhill and attacking things. He had a up and down spring game. He got thrown in the cornerback spot and got beat a couple times, but I love the way he bounced back this week and is making some plays today.
Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up for USC's 12th practice of spring camp for Shotgun Spratling. I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.